44 days, 23 hours, and 12 minutes. That was all the time left on the digital clock resting on the dashboard of my beat-up Ford F-150 before the city of Bozeman and the Homeowners Association seized my truck, garnished 25% of my wages, and threw me into total bankruptcy. My name is Dominique Brooks, though everyone in the high country of Montana calls me Dom. I am 33 years old, and my life is currently being crushed under a mountain of urgent debt. By day, I am a wildlife ranger and zoologist, tracking grizzly movements across the freezing terrain of the Montana wilderness for a modest salary. By night, I sit in front of a flickering monitor, operating as a high-precision digital photo retoucher, painstakingly correcting wedding portraits pixel by pixel to make ends meet. I thought I was being smart. I thought I had found a clever shortcut to fix my life. Facing a remaining $22,000 student loan and an agonizing $850 monthly medical bill for my rescue dog Barnaby, who is battling bone cancer, I made a fatal mistake. I pooled every single penny of my savings, signed a lease on a small apartment near downtown Bozeman, and secretly listed it on Airbnb to capture the net yield margin. I thought I was creating passive income. I thought I was playing the game of real estate arbitrage like the gurus online. But I failed to read the fine print. I ignored the newly passed local municipal zoning laws and the strict residential bylaws of the HOA board. 2 days ago, the mail arrived, an official notice from the city council and the HOA attorney. A civil fine of $1,000 per night for 18 documented unauthorized nights, totaling $18,000, plus an immediate court motion demanding a full disgorgement of all gross rental revenue generated over the last 6 months, amounting to another $14,400. My total balance due was $32,400, cash, required in full within 45 days. If I failed to pay or reach a binding debt settlement agreement, a court order would execute a wage garnishment direct from my government paycheck, place a lien against my personal property, and liquidate my F-150. My credit score was already plummeting toward a disastrous 520. Without that truck, I lose my job as a ranger. Without my job, Barnaby dies. I was staring straight into a financial abyss, paralyzed by a massive cash crunch and high-interest penalty fees accumulating at a compounding rate. The cold in Montana during late November does not just chill your skin, it bites into your bones. The wind howled against the glass of the HOA office building as I stood across the mahogany desk from Richard Vance, the HOA board president. He was a retired corporate attorney with slicked-back gray hair and a navy blue suit that cost more than my monthly ranger paycheck. "Look at this record, Miss Brooks," Richard said, sliding a thick legal document across the table. His tone was smooth, laced with absolute disdain. "You operated an illegal hotel in a zoned residential sanctuary. You brought transient strangers into our community to line your own pockets. You thought you were above the law." "Mr. Vance, please," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to hold it steady. "I am not a corporation. I am a public servant. I took a risk because my dog is sick and my student loan interest is suffocating me. I can pay back the principal revenue, but these punitive fines will destroy my life. Can we work out a low-interest monthly repayment plan?" Richard leaned back, folding his hands over his pristine leather desk. "This is not a charity, Miss Brooks. This is about maintaining property values and enforcing the law. You made a bad investment decision. Now you face the consequences. You have 44 days left. Pay the $32,400 in full, or our legal counsel will file for an immediate asset seizure and force you into Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Good day." I walked out into the freezing parking lot, the wind ripping through my thin ranger jacket. The injustice burned in my throat. We live in a system where wealthy investors buy up entire blocks of housing to manipulate the market, yet a working person trying to survive a personal cash flow crisis gets branded a criminal for illegal oversight. I felt ashamed. I was a trained scientist, a woman who could navigate a snowstorm in the backcountry, yet I was completely illiterate in the brutal language of personal finance and risk management. The temperature dropped to -10 degrees that night. I was on a late-night solo patrol inside the wildlife reserve, driving through a blinding snowstorm when I saw a pair of hazard lights blinking near the tree line. A vintage station wagon was stuck deep in a snowdrift off the access road. I pulled over, grabbed my tow chains, and stepped out into the storm. Sitting inside the vehicle was an elderly man with deep-set eyes, wearing a heavy tweed coat and a worn wool cap. His hands were weathered, the knuckles thick, but his eyes were remarkably calm despite the freezing conditions. His name was Arthur Vance. He was 72 years old, a master jeweler who lived in an off-grid timber cabin deep near the edge of the forest reserve. After I hitched his vehicle to my truck and pulled him out of the drift, his engine refused to turn over. With the recovery truck hours away due to the storm, I invited him into the ranger station outpost to warm up by the wood stove. As he sipped black coffee, Arthur noticed my laptop sitting on the wooden desk. On the screen was a high-resolution portrait of a bride, zoomed in at 400% magnification. I was using my stylus to manually correct tiny skin imperfections frame by frame. "You have extraordinary spatial discipline, young lady," Arthur said softly, watching my hand move across the digital tablet with absolute precision. "Most people today look at the big picture and rush for fast results. They lack the patience to master the micro details." I let out a bitter, exhausted laugh. Patience does not pay a $32,400 legal judgment in 44 days, sir. Micro details got me trapped in a debt spiral. Arthur looked at me intently. "Tell me what happened." For the next hour, the words spilled out of me. I told him about the failed Airbnb subletting scheme, the predatory HOA fines, my dismal 520 credit score, my dog's terminal illness, and the impending wage garnishment. I admitted my shame at trying to chase fast money instead of building real financial stability. Arthur listened without interrupting. When I finished, he set his mug down and looked at the fire. "Fast money is like a flash flood. It rushes in with great noise, destroys everything in its path, and vanishes just as quickly, leaving behind nothing but mud and debris. Real wealth is like an ancient pine tree. It grows slowly, quietly, deep in the soil. No winter storm can knock it down because its roots are bound to solid earth." He pulled a small, leather-bound notebook from his coat pocket and placed it on the table between us. "You tried to build a fortune on leverage and paper promises you did not control. That was your mistake. But your meticulous nature, your ability to focus on detail for hours, that is a rare asset. If you want to survive this crisis and build a true financial citadel, you must stop gambling and start executing a precise value creation strategy." Arthur laid out a 3-step financial blueprint that night over the crackling wood stove. First, he addressed my immediate cash flow deficiency. "Stop selling your photo editing skills as a cheap freelancer earning $5 a picture on public job boards," he instructed. "You're competing in a race to the bottom. Instead, pivot to a B2B agency model. Target high-end wedding and portrait photography studios in high-income markets like New York and Los Angeles. These studios are overwhelmed with post-production backlogs and pay exorbitant local labor costs. Offer a fixed monthly retainer model, $6,000 a month total, by securing 4 studio accounts at $1,500 each for full dedicated post-production processing. Your precision is your competitive advantage." Second, he addressed the debt structure. "You don't surrender to predatory collection demands," Arthur said. "You use federal debt resolution protocols. You submit a formal written notice of dispute under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, present a structured loss mitigation proposal, and demand a freeze on all punitive interest charges while offering a verified cash flow repayment plan based on your new recurring revenue. Third, he revealed his core wealth preservation secret: physical gold dollar-cost averaging. Once your cash flow is stabilized and your high-interest debt is restructured, you take exactly 20% of every dollar of net income and convert it into physical gold bullion. Standard 1-ounce or fractional gold eagles from accredited mints. Never buy paper gold ETFs. Never trade with digital leverage. Never speculate. Paper currencies depreciate through inflation. Real assets hold intrinsic value across generations. Gold is not a trade to get rich quick. It is the ultimate insurance policy against the systemic fragility of the banking system. I listened, but deep down my cynicism took over. It sounded too theoretical, too slow, too simple. Before Arthur left with the tow truck driver who finally arrived, he handed me the small leather notebook along with the heavy, tarnished gold coin. It was a 1907 St. Gaudens $20 gold piece. "Keep this as a reminder of what real value feels like," Arthur said. When I got home that night, exhausted and bitter, I threw the leather notebook and the gold coin into the dark bottom drawer of my metal tool chest. I thought he was just an eccentric old man living in the woods, disconnected from the harsh reality of modern inflation and instant court judgments. I did not believe a gold coin could save me from a legal execution order. Desperate for a quick fix, I ignored Arthur's advice. With only 38 days remaining on my deadline, I searched Craigslist for a shortcut. I found a local posting offering gold bars at a 15% discount below spot price. The seller claimed he needed immediate cash for a family emergency. Driven by fear and greed, I withdrew my last remaining $1,200 of emergency savings and met the seller in a dark parking lot near the highway. I bought 2 shiny 1-ounce gold bars in sealed plastic packaging. The next morning, filled with anxiety, I took them to a certified coin dealer in downtown Bozeman to verify their liquidity. The dealer took one look at the bars, placed them under an electromagnetic metal verifier, and shook his head. "These are tungsten cores plated with a microlayer of real gold," he said bluntly. "They are complete counterfeits, worthless." My heart stopped. The world spun around me. I had just lost my final $1,200. I had 0 savings left. My bank account showed a balance of $47. I walked out to my truck into a howling Montana blizzard. The wind shook the vehicle violently. I sat in the driver's seat, gasping for air as panic seized my chest. I rested my forehead against the cold steering wheel, sobbing hysterically in the dark. I whispered to myself, "I am just a ranger. I belong in the woods. Money, finance, security, they were never meant for someone like me. I am going to lose everything." Day 35 of the 45-day deadline arrived like a death sentence. At 2 a.m., Barnaby collapsed on the living room floor, whining in unbearable pain. I rushed him to the emergency veterinary hospital. The diagnosis was severe bone fracture complications related to his cancer. The surgeon was clear. An emergency operation was required immediately to save his leg and his life. The cost was $3,500 up front. No payment plans for emergency surgeries. I stood in the sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway of the clinic, holding my phone with shaking hands. I opened my banking app. Available balance, $14.32. I called my bank to apply for an emergency personal loan. Denied automatically within 10 seconds due to my 520 credit score. I called my ranger colleagues. None of them had that kind of cash available. They were all living paycheck to paycheck under the weight of rising inflation. At 6 a.m., I drove back to my small rented cabin, leaving Barnaby on heavy painkillers at the clinic. As I opened my front door, I saw a certified envelope resting on the floor. It was a final notice from the HOA attorney. My request for an informal repayment plan had been officially rejected by Richard Vance. The letter stated that an emergency motion for immediate bank account restraint, vehicle impoundment, and judicial wage garnishment would be filed at the Montana District Court at 9 a.m. morning on Monday. I had no money for the vet, no money for the fine. My truck was about to be seized. My job was about to be ruined. My dog was dying. I dropped to my knees on the cold, dirty linoleum floor of my kitchen. I screamed into the empty room until my throat burned, beating my fists against the floorboards. The darkness was absolute. I had reached the absolute bottom of human existence. At 7:15 a.m., driven by a quiet, hollow numbness, I began clearing out my tool chest to gather anything of mechanical value that I could sell to a pawn shop for scrap cash. Deep in the back of the bottom drawer, under layers of grease and iron tools, my fingers brushed against the small leather notebook and the heavy gold coin Arthur had given me weeks ago. I picked up the St. Gaudens gold coin. It felt heavy, cold, and solid in my palm. With no other options left, I went straight to a reputable independent numismatic firm listed in the back of Arthur's notebook, Bozeman Precious Metals Vault. I walked up to the counter and placed the gold coin on the velvet tray. "I need to liquidate this immediately for scrap bullion value," I said, my voice dead and raspy. "My dog is in the hospital." The senior valuation specialist, a man named Marcus with thick grasses, picked up the coin with white cotton gloves. He placed it under a high-powered jeweler's loupe. He adjusted the light. Then he stopped moving completely. Marcus looked up at me, his eyes wide with absolute disbelief. "Where did you get this coin?" "An old man gave it to me," I replied neutrally. "Is it fake too?" "Fake?" Marcus almost shouted. "Miss Brooks, this is not a standard bullion coin. Look at the relief of the strike. Look at the double date lettering. This is an original 1907 ultra-high relief St. Gaudens $20 gold piece." My breath caught in my throat. "How much is it worth?" I asked. "In this pristine condition," Marcus whispered, "it could fetch over $250,000 at an international auction." I stood there frozen, completely stunned. "Wait," Marcus continued, stepping back towards his computer terminal. "Your name is Dominique Brooks?" "Yes," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. Marcus retrieved a sealed manila envelope from a fireproof safe behind the desk. "Arthur Vance left an escrow directive with our vault 3 weeks ago. He deposited this coin into our secure custody registry under your name as an authorized beneficiary, but there are specific instructions." Marcus read the document aloud. "This coin is not to be sold. It is to remain intact as an anchor of real physical wealth. However, Arthur Vance has designated this certified asset as collateral to back a zero-interest institutional bridge loan of $10,000 executable immediately upon Miss Brooks's personal presentation of this coin." Arthur had not just given me a handout, he had tested my character, waiting to see if I would rush to liquidate a rare asset or if I would hit absolute bottom and finally seek true financial education. He created a collateralized liquidity line for me without breaking my spirit or forcing me into charity. Within 30 minutes, the $10,000 bridge loan was wire transferred directly into my account. I drove straight to the veterinary clinic and paid the $3,500 surgical deposit. Barnaby was wheeled into the operating room immediately. With $6,500 of liquidity remaining from the bridge loan and 2 weeks left before the court filing, I stopped panicking and executed Arthur's B2B retainer strategy with ruthless efficiency. I spent 18 hours a day building a professional website showcasing my high-end retouching work. I drafted a cold outreach proposal targeting large wedding photography studios in Southern California. Because I understood extreme detail, my value proposition was irresistible. I offered top-tier retouching services with a guaranteed 24-hour turnaround time for a fixed monthly retainer of $1,500 per studio. By day 42, I signed 4 major photography studios on annual B2B contracts. My newly established business was now generating a predictable, high-margin cash flow of $6,000 every single month. Armed with verified corporate bank statements proving stable cash flow, I hired a legal aid debt attorney. We filed a formal debt settlement and loss mitigation counterproposal to the HOA board and the city council. We offered to pay $12,000 in cash immediately using my remaining bridge capital and retainer income, while restructuring the remaining balance into fixed monthly payments with 0 interest penalties. Faced with a binding legal proposal backed by proven recurring revenue, Richard Vance and the HOA board had no legal grounds to refuse. They signed the settlement agreement. The court order was dismissed. My truck was saved. My wages remained untouched. Over the next 6 months, I worked relentlessly. I maintained my ranger duties by day and executed high-precision retouching work by night. With $6,000 in monthly recurring cash flow from my B2B agency, I paid off the $10,000 bridge loan in full within 90 days and safely returned the rare 1907 St. Gaudens coin to Arthur Vance. I paid off the remaining balance of the HOA settlement. I completely erased my $22,000 student loan debt. Following Arthur's third rule, I implemented the physical gold dollar-cost averaging protocol. Every single Friday, without exception, I took exactly 20% of my total net earnings and purchased physical 1-ounce American Gold Eagle coins from the accredited vault. I did not care about daily price fluctuations. I did not check speculative financial charts. I simply stacked physical bullion inside a heavy fireproof safe anchored to the concrete floor of my cabin. Within 12 months, my life was completely transformed. I had built a liquid emergency fund of $8,000 in cash. I had accumulated 12 ounces of physical gold bullion in my safe, valued at over $28,000, an unencumbered financial cushion protecting me against inflation and market volatility. My credit score roared back to a pristine 740. When a sudden economic downturn hit the region a year later, local housing prices in Bozeman stalled and speculative real estate investors faced massive liquidity defaults. Because I had 0 toxic high-interest debt, strong verified cash flow, and a substantial asset balance in physical gold, I was in a position of extreme strength. I liquidated a portion of my gold holdings to secure a down payment on a small foreclosed timber cabin located on 2 acres of land just outside the city limits. I converted it into a fully permitted, legal eco-cabin rental for wilderness hikers. Today, my net worth is higher than it has ever been. I own a dual-asset portfolio, combining a cash-flowing real estate property with a physical reserve of 25 ounces of gold bullion, acting as my permanent financial moat. Barnaby is fully recovered, running happily across the snow alongside my truck on morning patrols. True wealth is never measured by how fast you can make a quick buck or how cleverly you can bend the rules to generate short-term cash. Fast money is an illusion that crumbles at the first sign of a systemic storm. True financial freedom is built quietly through discipline, persistent cash flow generation, and the unwavering accumulation of real, unencumbered assets over time. Protect your downside, master your trade, and build a fortress that no winter can ever tear down.